Look at the garment you are wearing at this very moment. To your physical eyes, it is merely a composition of cotton, wool, silk, or synthetic polymers, a product of a factory, a shield against the elements, a decorative shell for your social identity. But the Watchman sees a different reality. To the soul, fabric is not an inert object. It is a second skin, a porous, vibrating membrane that sits at the intersection of your internal biological frequency and the external chaos of the world. You must understand the esoteric truth that your skin is the primary boundary of your spirit, but your clothes are the extensions of that boundary. They are not just covers, they are recorders. They are woven archives of every emotion, every trauma, and every victory experienced while draped over the human frame. Every thread is a silent witness. When you put on a piece of clothing, you are not simply dressing your body, you are entering into a symbiotic relationship with a material that has the capacity to absorb, store, and radiate the energy of the wearer. The ancient weavers knew this. They understood that the process of spinning and weaving was a sacred act of binding intent. In the old world, a garment was crafted with prayers, with specific rhythms, and with the awareness that the fabric would eventually house the essence of a living being. Today, in our age of mindless consumption and fast fashion, we have lost this reverence. We treat clothes as disposable commodities, unaware that these fabrics are biomagnetic sponges. Think of the biology of stress. When you are in a state of high cortisol, when you are sweating in fear, when your heart is racing in anger, your body releases a complex chemical and energetic signature. Your clothes do not just catch the moisture, they absorb the frequency of that state. This is what the Watchman calls the frequency stain. It is a residue that survives the wash, survives the drying, and survives the passage of time. It lives in the weave, a ghost in the material world. By wearing the unpurified garments of another, you are effectively allowing a stranger to rewrite your energetic code. Every fiber has a memory, and every memory has a weight. We must go deeper into the physics of this spiritual contamination. Matter is not solid. It is a shimmering field of energy, and fabric is particularly susceptible to the laws of adsorption. This is the process where atoms, ions, or molecules from a substance, including human emotional energy, adhere to a surface. When a person undergoes a period of intense grief, chronic depression, or violent rage, their entire auric field becomes heavy and distorted. This distortion is not contained within the soul. It radiates outward, permeating everything in immediate contact. Your clothes, being the closest objects to your energetic centers, act as the primary storage units for this auric fallout. This is why a garment worn during a funeral or a traumatic breakup often feels wrong, even after it has been professionally cleaned. The stain is not on the surface, It is in the molecular structure of the thread itself. The Watchman observes that modern man is walking through the world draped in fossilized emotions. When you buy second-hand clothing without a spiritual audit, you are engaging in a dangerous form of alchemy. You are bringing into your personal temple the unresolved wars of a stranger. Perhaps that beautiful vintage coat was worn by a woman who lived in a state of perpetual betrayal. Perhaps that rugged jacket belonged to a man who was consumed by the fires of addiction. When you slip your arms into those sleeves, you are not just adopting a style, you are adopting a posture of the soul. The garment carries the muscular memory of the previous owner's struggles. It subtly pulls your shoulders down with their burdens. It constricts your chest with their anxieties. You wonder why your mood shifts, why your thoughts take a dark turn, or why your vitality seems to leak away. It is because you are wearing a spiritual parasite, a fabric that is still feeding on the frequency of its former host. You have become the new battery for an old sorrow. There is a profound danger in what society calls vintage or pre-loved clothing. While the world sees economy and fashion, the Watchman sees a spiritual entanglement. When you wear a garment that has been worn for years by another, honoring our ancestors by wearing their old uniforms, their wedding dresses, or their heavy winter coats, but often we are merely inheriting their spiritual debt. If your grandfather wore a coat while he struggled through the bitterness of a failed life, that coat is saturated with the frequency of his defeat. By wearing it, you are signaling to the universe that you are willing to continue his war. You are literally wrapping yourself in the echoes of his battles, making it infinitely harder to win your own. The threads of a garment act as a tether to the past. Sovereignty is the ability to stand in your own light, free from the shadows of those who came before. But how can you be sovereign when you are wearing the uniform of a servant or the shroud of a victim? The energy of the previous owner acts as a frequency filter. It colors your perception of reality. If the original wearer viewed the world through the lens of scarcity and fear, the fabric will transmit those same signals to your nervous system. You are being programmed by the very clothes on your back. This is the subtle sabotage of the wardrobe. The Watchman warns, do not be fooled by the beauty of the lace or the quality of the leather. If the spirit of the previous wearer was not at peace, the garment will never allow you to be at peace. You are not just wearing a piece of history, you are carrying a cargo of unfinished business. To reclaim your own narrative, you must first strip away the stories of others that you have inadvertently draped over your shoulders. The most potent imprints are those left by high-intensity trauma. There are garments that function as spiritual black holes, absorbing the light of anyone who enters their field. Think of the clothes worn during a sudden accident, a period of intense illness, or a moment of profound spiritual crisis. These events leave a shattered frequency in the fabric. Even if the garment is gifted to you with the best of intentions, its core memory is one of fragmentation. The Watchman sees that many of you are struggling with unexplained fragmentation of the self. You feel scattered, unable to focus, and constantly plagued by a sense of impending doom. Have you looked at your closet? Have you considered that you are living inside a museum of trauma? This resonance is not limited to the physical touch. It creates a spiritual atmosphere in your home. A closet filled with the unpurified clothes of the dead or the suffering acts as a negative ion generator for your sanctuary. It pulls the frequency of the room down, creating a stagnant environment where the light cannot circulate. You are sleeping in a room where the shadows of other people's sorrows are hanging just a few feet away. To the Watchman, this is the height of spiritual negligence. You protect your computer with firewalls. You protect your home with locks. Yet you allow the Trojan horses of foreign energies to sit in your wardrobe. Every time you open that closet door, you are being bombarded by a static of discordant memories. This is why a simple decluttering often feels like a spiritual weight has been lifted. You are not just removing cloth, you are breaking the resonance of trauma. You are clearing the air so that your own soul can finally be heard above the noise of the threads. The passage of garments within a family is often viewed as a gesture of love or a practical necessity, but the Watchman sees a vertical entanglement. When you receive a hand-me-down from a parent or an older sibling, you are receiving more than a textile. You are receiving a spiritual baton in a relay race of karma. We must understand the concept of bloodline resonance. Because you share a genetic signature with the previous owner, the fabric's stored energy has a master key to your own energetic field. There is no resistance. Your soul recognizes the frequency of the garment because it is the frequency of your own lineage. If your father wore a particular coat during his years of silent desperation and unfulfilled dreams, that coat is not just a piece of wool. It is a vibrational blueprint of his struggle. When you put it on, your own cells begin to vibrate in sympathy with that old sorrow. You are inadvertently saying yes to his unresolved battles. This is the hidden tragedy of the family heirloom. We cherish the wedding dress of a grandmother whose marriage was a hollow shell of duty, or the watch of a grandfather who lived in a state of perpetual fear. By keeping these items close to our bodies, we are anchoring their historical stagnation into our present reality. The Watchman observes that many of you are unable to move forward in your lives because you are literally dressed in the past. You are trying to build a new future while wearing the shackles of the ancestors. Fabric acts as a bridge across time. It does not know that the original wearer is gone. It only knows that the pattern must be repeated. To break the cycle of family trauma, you must first audit the family wardrobe. You must ask, Am I honoring them, or am I merely repeating their pain? Sovereignty requires a clean slate, and a clean slate often requires a new set of clothes, free from the echoes of those who walked the path before you. We must now turn our gaze to the modern phenomenon of fast fashion, for the Watchman sees a different kind of horror in the cheap, mass-produced garments of today. You buy a shirt for the price of a meal, thinking you have found a bargain, but you have no eyes for the spiritual price tag. Every garment produced in a sweatshop, under the shadow of exploitation, misery, and despair, carries the scream of the maker. The atoms of the fabric do not care about the brand name. They record the environment of their creation. If a garment was woven by a child in a state of exhaustion, or a woman working in a prison of necessity, that fabric is saturated with hopelessness. This is the energy of the machine and the energy of the slaved. When you clothe yourself in these items, you are wrapping your body in the frequency of human suffering. The Watchman warns, there is no such thing as a cheap garment. If you do not pay with money, you pay with your frequency. By wearing clothes born from exploitation, you are aligning your own auric field with the vibration of scarcity and oppression. You wonder why you feel a constant low-level anxiety, or why you feel worthless despite your external success. It is because you are wearing the uniform of the exploited. The synthetic fibers of these garments act as a barrier to the natural light of the soul, trapping the negative resonance against your skin. This is a form of material poisoning. A sovereign spirit requires a sacred origin for its second skin. To wear a garment is to endorse the process of its birth. If that birth was violent and joyless, the garment will act as a dampener on your own joy. You are participating in a global vibration of greed, and that greed is a heavy burden that will eventually crush your spiritual vitality. If fabric can store shadow, it can also be a fortress of light. The seventh block is about the alchemy of the shield. The Watchman knows that a wise soul uses clothing as a spiritual filter. Since ancient times, the high priests and the watchmen of old wore specific materials, linen, silk, and pure wool, to maintain the integrity of their energetic fields. These natural fibers are high-frequency conductors. They breathe with the spirit and allow the auric light to circulate freely. Silk, in particular, has been known for millennia as a spiritual insulator, capable of repelling the low-vibration static of the marketplace. When you are in a crowd or in a place of heavy energy, the right garment acts as a secondary shield, preventing the energetic debris of others from adhering to your skin. You must learn the art of the conscious wardrobe. To be sovereign is to be intentional. You do not dress for the eyes of the world. You dress for the sanctity of the self. A garment of pure linen, grown in the sun and woven with intent, carries a solar frequency that uplifts the wearer. It acts as a buffer zone against the chaos of the environment. The Watchman observes that when you wear synthetic, plastic-based fabrics, you are effectively suffocating the spirit. You are creating a Faraday cage of the soul that traps your own toxins and blocks the incoming light of the cosmos. To heal your shoulders and your heart, you must return to the organic covenant. Your clothes should be a liturgy of the flesh, a celebration of your connection to the earth and the sky. When you wear a garment that is clean in its origin and noble in its material, your posture naturally shifts. You stand taller, not out of pride, but out of energetic alignment. Your clothes are the boundary of your power. Guard that boundary with the wisdom of the ancients.
But what of the garments we already possess? What of the beloved shadows that sit in our closets? The 8th block is the exorcism of the cloth. The Watchman tells you that while the memory of fabric is deep, it is not irreversible. You have the authority to neutralize the material ghost. Before you wear a second-hand item, or even a new item of uncertain origin, you must perform a spiritual audit. The first step is elemental purging. Sun and moon are the primary cleansers of the fabric world. To hang a garment in the direct light of the sun is to invite the solar intelligence to incinerate the low-vibration shadows held within the threads. To leave it under the moon is to allow the magnetic pull of the lunar cycle to draw out the stagnant emotional residue of the past. But the most potent tool is the power of intent and salt. Salt is a crystal of absorption. By soaking a garment in a solution of salt and water, or burying it in dry salt, you are wiping the magnetic tape of the fabric. You are resetting the material to its 0 point. As you do this, you must issue a decree of severance. You speak to the threads. I release the memories of the previous owner. I sever the cords of their battles and their sorrows. I claim this second skin for my own frequency. This is not superstition. It is quantum recalibration. You are commanding the atoms of the material to align with your own will. If a garment still feels heavy after this process, it is a sign that the contamination of the spirit is too deep, and the fabric must be returned to the earth through fire or burial. Do not negotiate with a vampiric thread. Your sovereignty is worth more than any piece of silk. Cleanse your wardrobe, for you cannot walk into your new destiny while wearing the shrouds of the old. The Watchman observes that modern humanity has become a vassal to a transient and hollow god, the god of fashion. We must look beyond the vanity of the mirror to the psychological captivity that defines the modern wardrobe. Why do you feel compelled to change your second skin with every passing season? It is not a matter of utility, nor is it a matter of true aesthetic growth. It is a systemic hook, a spiritual mechanism designed to keep your consciousness tethered to the frequency of insufficiency. When you chase a trend, you are admitting to the universe that your current state is not enough. You are allowing an external industry, a cold, calculating machine of the ego, to dictate the boundaries of your identity. Each new trend is a lattice of control, woven to ensure that the individual never finds the stillness of their own sovereignty. You are being moved like a pawn in a game of vestiary chess, where the goal is to keep you in a state of perpetual hunger for the next version of yourself. This psychological captivity manifests as a spiritual static. When you wear clothes that are designed to satisfy the eyes of others rather than the soul within, you are living in a state of outward projection. You are essentially wearing a social armor that is transparent to the wise, but heavy upon your own spirit. The Watchman asks, who is the architect of your style? Is it the quiet whisper of your own intuition, or is it the loud, frantic shouting of the collective market? To follow the trend is to submerge your unique frequency into the gray soup of the masses. You become a trend eater, consuming the discarded identities of the industry, never realizing that you are being consumed in return. Your closet becomes a graveyard of temporary selves, each garment representing a moment where you traded your sovereignty for a sense of belonging. To be a watchman of your own life, you must break the loom of trends and return to the original thread of your own being. Sovereignty is not found in the new, it is found in the true.
We move now to a darker and more rigid structure of the vestiary world, the uniform. Whether it is the literal uniform of the soldier, the corporate suit of the executive, or the ritualistic robes of the religious, these garments are designed to do one thing: to dissolve the individual. When you put on a uniform, you are not just wearing a costume, you are stepping into a collective consciousness, an egregore that has its own will, its own history, and its own darkness. The fabric of a uniform is saturated with the intent of the system. It acts as a frequency override, dampening your personal vibration and replacing it with the signal of the institution. The Watchman warns, you cannot wear the uniform of a system and remain entirely sovereign. The threads are woven with the oaths of obedience, even if those oaths were never spoken aloud by your own lips. This egregore effect is particularly potent in organizations that have existed for centuries. When you put on a robe or suit associated with a long history of power, you are inviting the ghosts of the institution to sit upon your shoulders. You are adopting the biases, the sins, and the sorrows of every person who wore that uniform before you. This is why many people undergo a radical personality shift the moment they put on their work clothes. They become colder, more rigid, or more prone to the violence of bureaucracy. It is the fabric that is leading them. The uniform is a somatic trigger that activates a specific programmed persona. The Watchman asks you, do you know how to undress your soul when you take off the uniform? Or has the frequency of the system become so embedded in your skin
that you no longer know where the institution ends and the man begins. To reclaim your light, you must learn to defund the egregore. You must recognize that your power does not come from the badge or the fabric, but from the unconditioned spirit that resides beneath the layers of the world's expectations. The Watchman must speak to the burden that you have created for yourself, the vestiary shadow of your own history. It is a common mistake to believe that only the clothes of others carry a curse. In truth, your own garments can become energetic prisons if they were worn during the winter of your soul. Think of the shirt you wore when you received the news of a tragedy. Think of the suit you wore during the collapse of your business, or the dress you wore as your heart was being dismantled by betrayal. You may have washed those items 100 times, but the sweat of fear and the chemical of grief are not removed by soap. They are quantum imprints that have etched themselves into the very lattice of the material. When you put those clothes on again, you are re-triggering the trauma. You are telling your nervous system to return to that place of pain. This is the echo of the self. We often keep these clothes out of a misplaced sense of nostalgia or practicality, but the Watchman sees that you are merely keeping your wounds on life support. Every time you wear a garment associated with a period of stagnation, you are inviting that stagnation to return. You are reinforcing a vibrational loop. You wonder why you cannot seem to break free from a particular cycle of failure or depression. Look to what you are wearing. You are literally wrapped in your own defeat. The soul requires new skins for new eras. To move into a state of sovereignty, you must be willing to perform a sacred eviction of your own wardrobe. You must burn or discard the clothes of the victim so that you can make room for the robes of the victor. Do not let your closet be a museum of your past sorrows. Your body is a temple of the eternal now, and it deserves to be draped in fabrics that resonate with the ascension of the spirit, not the gravity of the grave. The 12th block brings us to the threshold of choice. We have explored the shadows, the contaminations, and the psychological traps. But now we must speak of the sovereignty of curation. You are the high priest of your own temple, and your wardrobe is your sacred armory. To be a watchman is to be intellectually and spiritually selective. You must move from the accidental wardrobe to the curated sanctuary. This begins with the sanctification of the fabric. You must choose your materials with the same care that you choose your thoughts. Natural fibers, cotton, silk, wool, and linen are your allies, for they are the conduits of earth and sky. They do not trap the spirit, they allow it to breathe and expand. This curation is an act of spiritual diplomacy. You are communicating to the universe who you are and what you stand for. When you choose a garment that is clean in its origin, noble in its material, and aligned with your personal vibration, you are sealing your aura. You are creating a vibrational buffer that protects you from the discordant noise of the modern world. The Watchman tells you your clothes should be an extension of your prayer. They should be the physical manifestation of your intent to live as a free and sovereign being. This requires you to audit every thread. If a garment does not bring you a sense of lightness, strength, or peace, it has no place in your sanctuary. You must be ruthless in your selection, for every item you keep is a contract of influence. Reclaim your wardrobe as a tool of ascension. When you dress with intent, you are not just preparing for the day, you are invoking your destiny. You are telling the shadows of the past and the pressures of the collective that your skin is no longer available for their wars. You are finally and truly dressed in your own light.
The Watchman must now direct your attention to the most grounded, yet spiritually contaminated aspect of your wardrobe, the shoes. In the esoteric traditions of the ancients, the feet are the antennas of the earth, the primary conductors of the terrestrial current. Your shoes are the insulators of this connection. They are the only part of your attire that maintains constant physical contact with the soil of history. But consider the hidden burden they carry. Shoes do not just absorb the moisture of the feet, they absorb the struggle of the path. Every step taken by the previous owner, every moment of hesitation, every walk through the valley of despair, every frantic run from a perceived threat is recorded in the leather and the sole. When you put on another man's shoes, you are not just adopting his style, you are literally walking in his shadows. You are assuming his kinetic brief. The leather, being a dead skin itself, has a profound capacity to hold on to the postural trauma of the one who broke them in. This is the limp of the ancestor. Have you ever noticed that you begin to walk differently when you wear certain shoes? Have you felt a sudden, inexplicable fatigue in your legs, or a sense of directionless wandering that was not there before? It is the ghost of the previous path trying to dictate your movement. The Watchman warns, never accept the shoes of the broken. If the original owner was a man who walked in the circles of failure, those shoes will subconsciously guide your feet back into those same circles. They act as magnetic anchors to a timeline you did not choose. In the spiritual realm, your walk is your destiny. To be sovereign is to forge your own path on your own terms. By wearing the vestiary history of another's journey, you are surrendering the lead of your own life. You are allowing the fatigue of the departed to weigh down your ascent. To reclaim your stride, you must wear shoes that have been baptized by your own intent, broken in by your own victories, and directed toward your own horizon. The soles of your feet must be free to hear the whisper of the earth without the interference of a stranger's sorrow. We move now from the soft threads to the hard conductors of your identity, the jewelry, the watches, and the belts. The Watchman knows that metal is the memory core of the material world. Unlike cotton or wool, which eventually decay, gold, silver, and steel are eternal recorders. They do not just absorb frequency, they amplify it. A ring is not a mere decoration, it is a closed circuit of intent. When you wear a ring that belonged to another, you are stepping into a covenant you did not sign. If that ring was worn through decades of a bitter marriage, it carries the frequency of the chain. If it was a signet of power used by a man of malice, it carries the vibration of the sword. The atoms of the metal have been polarized by the constant presence of the previous owner's biomagnetic field. They are hardened witnesses to every oath, every lie, and every secret held in their presence. This is the curse of the heirloom. We cherish the watches of our grandfathers, unaware that the ticking of the gears is synchronized with the anxiety of their time. A watch that measured the hours of a man's lifelong struggle will transmit that pressure of the clock to your own wrist. It becomes a spiritual shackle, binding your perception of time to his limitations. The Watchman knows that jewelry is often used as a vibrational anchor to keep the living tethered to the unfinished business of the dead. This is why certain pieces of jewelry feel heavy or cold despite their beauty. They are saturated with the static of the past. To wear them without a radical alchemical purge is to invite a foreign sovereignty into your most intimate space. You must realize that your accessories are the nodes of your aura. They should act as magnifiers of your light, not as transmitters of another's darkness. If a piece of metal does not resonate with the ascension of your soul, it is not an ornament, it is a chain. Break the circuit. Reclaim your wrists, your neck, and your fingers for your own divine signature.
The Watchman now grants you the final key to the sanctity of the wardrobe, the ritual of recalibration. You have identified the shadows, you have understood the imprints, and now you must act with the authority of the spiritual sovereign. For those garments and items that you choose to keep, those that have a primary utility or a deep soulful connection, you must perform a severance of the loom. This is not a task for the casual mind. It requires the smokeless fire of intent. You must create a sanctuary of sound and salt. Begin by placing the garment in a space of silence and stillness. Use the frequency of a bell or a singing bowl to shatter the crystalline memory held within the threads. Vibration is the master of matter. By introducing a high-frequency sound, you are shaking the ghosts out of the weave. You are disrupting the stagnant patterns of the past and forcing the atoms to reset to a state of neutrality. Follow this with the benediction of the breath. Hold the garment and breathe into it the light of the now. As you exhale, visualize your own frequency colonizing the fabric, overwriting the old data with your own sovereign code. Issue the decree of the Watchman. I am the master of this skin. I dissolve the battles of the stranger. I incinerate the sorrows of the departed. This thread is now a servant of my light. You must treat this as a rebirthing of the material. For new clothes, even those from the shop, you must exercise the machine. Wash them with the intent of removing the factory static and the gray energy of mass production. The goal is to ensure that every fiber touching your body is in sympathy with your spirit. Your wardrobe should not be a collection of commodities, but a congregation of allies. When you dress, you should feel a clarity of the field, as if you are stepping into a suit of spiritual armor designed specifically for your mission on this earth. This is how you seal the sanctuary.
We conclude this 40-minute vigil at the highest peak of the Watchman's wisdom. You must realize that the ultimate garment is not made of cloth, nor leather, nor gold. The ultimate garment is your auric light, the body of glory that radiates from the core of your being. All physical clothing is merely a support structure for this primary radiance. The tragedy of modern man is that he focuses on the shell while the seed is starving. But by purifying your second skin, you have removed the spiritual dampeners that were dimming your inner sun. You have stripped away the wars of the ancestors and the sorrows of the stranger, leaving only the raw purity of the self. You are no longer a walking archive of pain. You are a sovereign beacon of the present. The Watchman sees you now, unburdened, upright, and dressed in the garment of praise. Your shoulders are no longer hunched by the weight of dead men's coats. Your feet are no longer led by the fatigue of broken men's shoes. Your heart is no longer constricted by the grief of the weave. You have completed the great work of the wardrobe. As you walk back into the world, do so with the vigilance of the sovereign. Never again allow your skin to be a bargaining chip for the shadows. Never again trade your frequency for the sake of a cheap bargain or a hollow trend. You are the high priest of your own anatomy. Every thread you wear is a vow of intent. Every color you choose is a frequency of war or peace. Stand tall in your sanctified skin. The era of inherited sorrow is over. The era of the self-clothed sovereign has begun. The dream was a warning. The preparation was a ritual, and the result is your freedom. The Watchman's deep has spoken. The vigil is closed, but the light remains. Walk in your own light, and let the world see the true fabric of who you